Oh, you want to go there? Okay.
Yep.
Hello. Hi.
Morning.
Hey, morning.
There are some agendas out front if you want to grab one for your second.
you. Morning.
Morning.
Me, right here. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to DAC. I'd like to call the February 19th DAC meeting to order. We'll begin with roll call. Sarah King, present. Stephen Kroll,
Present.
William Kraus,
Present.
Eleanor Burke, Hassan Nagendra,
Present.
Louis Haywood, absent. Lindsay Glatz, absent. Django Salaji.
Present.
Present. At this time, would the committee make a motion to adopt the minutes from the January 15th meeting?
Second.
Okay. Motion. Yay. And CPC. And Louis Haywood is now present.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, and the motion passes. We'll begin now with the consideration of dockets. The staff will provide a brief overview, and then the applicant will have 10 minutes to present. We will then hear any public comments, and each person will have 2 minutes to speak. If there's opposition, the applicant will have 5 minutes to rebut. The committee will then discuss the project and can ask questions, and then we'll vote on the application. The second item on today's agenda is the consideration of design review 00-25, an administrative design review in accordance with Article 4, Section 4.5, and Article 18, Section 18.16 of the CZO for new construction of a church campus located in a CT corridor transformation design overlay district. The building modifications are to be reviewed in accordance with 18.16.b of the building design standards. Today we have Stephen Belflower signed up to speak on behalf of the application, and Valerie Goines is a CPC staff member assigned to this case. As a reminder, following the staff presentation, the applicant will have 10 minutes to present.
The structure of the parking lot. The proposal complies with the building yard requirements of Article 15. Show compliance with the building design standards of Article 15, Section 15.3B1F. Staff requests that the applicant mark up the elevations to show a minimum ceiling height 12 feet from the ground floor. Staff will discuss the parking requirement with the Department of Safety and Permits. If a variance is needed, staff will provide the applicant with information on how to apply the waiver. Revise the parking plan to show compliance with Article 23, Section 23.7C1, which requires that one parking lot island be provided between every 10 contiguous parking spaces. And also adds the plan for the parking space dimensions, the dimensions of the curb cut and dimensions of the aisle. Provide the landscape plan which shows compliance with the requirements of Article 23.7A. And lastly, elaborate on the structure that the site plan designates as the preschool space. In this, that's all I have.
Thank you, Valerie. Stephen, go ahead.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Stephen Belflower, I'm the architect representing the United Fellowship Congregation of Seventh-day Adventists. They are consolidating 3 separate congregations across the Orleans Metro into one new campus in New Orleans East. We're coming before you today with a partial submittal. Early in the schematic design process, we wanted to ensure that we were complying with the CDO regarding the location of the buildings on the site, the location of the parking, and the style of the buildings before proceeding into construction documents. So we will be submitting a later submittal that should hopefully be addressing most of the questions that you outlined for us today. So the site itself is an undeveloped parcel on Bullard Avenue in New Orleans East. It's never been developed, and that site sits about 3 feet above the curb, which is great for kind of developing the site and not needing extensive ramping or elevating the buildings too high above the street. Around the project, there are on 3 sides, there are single-story commercial structures, mostly strip centers, and the materials of those buildings comprise stucco, brick, and storefront glazing. And then on the rear side of the property, there is a suburban residential development of single-family homes. When designing the project, some important considerations were wanting to create a feel of a campus and a religious campus, and most importantly, create a central space for both functions that are specific to that congregation and for functions that would be for community outreach. And we looked at both traditional and modern forms on how to kind of evoke a religious architecture of the campus while also leaning into a more modest budget for this project. So you're going to see a mix of brick, metal panel, and storefront windows for the campus design. On the next slide, you can kind of see our palette for this project. The Carrollton on Carrollton Avenue was a huge inspiration, both in the terms of the brick detailing, the contrast of the metal elements against the whitewashed brick, and looking at how we would contrast or kind of lean into this form of using pre-engineered metal buildings, but cladding them in a way that makes them feel a little bit fresh and not like a retail strip center. Next slide. So for our site plan, the most important component was creating a central courtyard that would be shared between the 2 primary buildings of the site, a sanctuary space that's around 12,000 square feet, and an influence center, which is basically going to be a community center and fellowship space for the congregation, sharing that central courtyard, and that central courtyard acting as a central spine that both kind of welcomes the community into their campus, as well as serving as a kind of welcoming device from the parking spaces. All the buildings are brought up to the front of the street for the CZO requirements, with the parking concealed in the rear. And then the school is given its own presence on that campus plan at the end of the parking area. Additionally, there will be significant stormwater detention for this site since it's been developed, and that stormwater detention is going to be incorporated into the site design. You don't need me to go through the layouts of the buildings. So for the elevations, what we're doing here is wanting to work with the church's modest budget, but give them a high level of architecture. And what we're doing is we're using pre-engineered metal buildings and letting that form speak to kind of this religious architecture with a low pitched sloped roof, and then capping some of the primary elevations with beautiful brick detailing and leaning on some historical precedents, even here in New Orleans, of using this kind of arch motif within that brick. And so there's going to be this dichotomy of having brick with these primary elements on the lower portion, and above letting that metal building kind of speak to this modern piece above that brick. So what you'll see is there's going to be a wrap of brick on each of the primary elevations, and then the side elevations for each of the building is going to be some type of metal panel inset storefront. Now we'll go for the next slide as well. And then lastly, for the school building, this was kind of building on those traditional school forms from the 1920s. We get that central main entrance point kind of flanked by symmetrical wings. This is also going to be not a pre-engineered metal building, but a wood framed or steel framed building clad in metal panel. And then lastly, there's going to be a few renderings of the site. You can see the central campus feature connecting with a kind of a covered arcade connecting all three buildings. There's going to be a central sort of share feature that's this welcoming device from the courtyard, I'm sorry, from the parking area. And if we go on here, so this is our street elevation from Bullard Avenue. What's really important to the community here is bringing the influence center, the community center to the front of that property and using kind of like a Italianate loggia proportions along the gymnasium there and using those three front windows as kind of this welcoming piece visually into the work that's going on inside the campus, inside the influence center. Then you just want to click through the remaining slides. All right, ready for questions?
Okay, thank you. At this time, we can begin committee member discussion. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah. Can we go back to a slide with the site plan, please?
Yes.
Now, the two-dimensional one, not the rendering. Yeah, it's somewhere down there, yeah, the second slide, yeah, the one right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so to your credit, trying to evoke some of the historical context in the older parts of the city is laudable. I like that. But what I am not seeing, I guess, is a couple of things. The proportionality with the material choices that you have made does not seem to match with your examples that you're showing. So the question really here is, are you going the suburban route or are you going into the urban route? So I am not sure exactly where you're heading with the design language or grammar, if you will. The second thing that I'm concerned about is you show one of the buildings skewed from the geometry of your plot area. Can you help me understand why that is? Because it doesn't seem to respect the street in that sense.
So as you come down Bullard Avenue, when we were studying the massing, bringing all of those buildings to the front setback line, it was a little imposing. There's no other context on Bullard Avenue for having that much building along the front setback line. So what we did is we kicked the building back to serve as a welcoming visually as you drive down Bullard, of creating this moment of showing that there was a courtyard beyond the influence center. And then that becomes a welcoming moment into the building sanctuary. So there's a huge setback and porch-like feature with an arch and signage right there on the corner of the building, as well as a cross tower feature on that turn corner as well.
If you had as much property as you are looking at, I'm just thinking aloud, it's not a comment, a negative comment. You have begun to sort of skew it, and I wondered whether having in crescent shape drop off to the courtyard and to the two buildings facing Bullard would be a reasonable answer to trying to make it more meaningful from a site plan perspective. It's just a critique. I'm not directing you to do it, but I'm asking the question because I'm trying to get a better understanding of where you are.
Is the question or critique to add a drive on the Bullard Avenue side of the building?
As a designer, I might consider that seriously, yes.
Okay. One question that I was having with the church's building committee was ultimately what they wanted was to set the buildings all the way in the back of the site and put the parking in front. And that was particularly challenging in meeting the requirements of the CZO of pushing the buildings up to the maximum building setback. Hearing that comment makes me think, you know, where do these buildings fall within that context of the CZO? You know, could we push the buildings back further to meet the church's desires? Or must they be at that max building setback?
No, they have to be at the next.
Okay, and that's what I assume.
A question about, right now it's an undeveloped parcel, is that correct? Could we have permeable pavement in the concrete? Because I noticed in the rendering that the grassy area behind is labeled future development site, right? And so I just feel like we're gonna negate a lot of like the water retention opportunities here. So I'd love to see some more like incorporation of just water retention. So that doesn't impact the use of this houses right nearby.
I agree, and so we have retained an engineer for the schematic design portion to assist with preliminary stormwater calculations.
Okay.
Ultimately, we want to ensure that the stormwater retention on this site can accommodate all future development. And other strategies are going to be, you know, doing code required permeable paving in the parking space. And if the budget allows, we would definitely be in the port line.
The driveway directly across from that median opening.
Yes. It's directly across. Am I allowed to ask questions as well? Thank you, Valerie. Valerie, you mentioned the minimum ceiling height of 12 feet. This was another conversation I've had with the building committee. We understand that the CDO is requiring that. Unfortunately, for much of the office and educational spaces, they do not need a 12-foot ceiling height. And we're wondering if we could apply for variance for 10 feet. Just because this isn't a commercial building, it's kind of a religious institutional building. Okay,
Yeah, I mean, I'll just make the note that the 12-foot requirement is really kind of for the portions of the buildings immediately along Bullard. So that the third building, which I believe is school setback, isn't subject to that 12-foot requirement. Or,
okay.
The question in terms of base flood elevation, if the site's going to be built up, the buildings are grade and will these buildings be- right now, the way you're portraying them, that they're very great.
In the renderings, they are looking like they're even with the street. So the site right now has 3 feet of fill on it.
Okay.
So the plan is to retain that,
Mhm.
and the buildings might be, you know, only be another 6 inches or so above that 3 feet. But on the campus itself, they will be on grade, but there will be a minor slope going from the buildings to the sidewalk.
The only other comment I had was regarding the courtyard elevation of the influence center. There's sort of a rectilinear entry pavilion. The sheets on my. And this elevation.
Mhm.
It's, where the signage is, that sort of entry pavilion, it seems like it could be punched out a little bit taller. Above the level of the building itself. Punched up a little bit, it seems like it just, you know, maybe another 6 to 10 inches. Give it a better proportion.
Okay, I agree.
More entry.
Well, one thing that we're gonna do is, as we wrap up schematic design and go into construction documents, is really get a better understanding of what some of the detailing is gonna be in those proportions. So we'll definitely reevaluate.
I think you've done. Content to, you know. Keep that metal. Planning and we can. Break our elevation.
Anyone else?
I have one other question, regarding the minimum number of glazing or the Bullard Avenue elevations, which I know is supposed to be about 50% of the facade. We are not meeting that requirement. Again, I think that lends itself really well to a commercial building, you know, a religious building. Is that something else that we could get a variance for?
Yeah, the 50% only applies to commercial, so as an institutional building, we wouldn't be held to
Okay.
that hard number.
Any other comments?
I'll make a motion for approval subject to the comments expressed here about sort of punching up that entryway, considering a drop-off area. And looking into, or, you know, basically encouraging as much permeable surfaces as possible. To capture everything.
Yeah, so motion by CPC for approval subject to the comments discussed today. Is there a second?
Second,
Second by Capital Projects. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One last comment regarding my contact information. I just noticed my email was incorrect on the agenda. I want to make sure it was correct.
Yeah, I noticed that. I'm sorry. It's with a V. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's
My
okay.
mistake.
Just want to make sure we're good. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
so I didn't see any.
Okay, now I'm here.
There's like.
Number two, number three, Zimpel Street.
Item 5 is Royal,
I would do.
Mhm.
Royal Street.
Item two, right? I mean,
I
item
just
three.
have abstain from voting on the next two,
Okay.
because he lives nearby, so as to avoid any perceived conflict.
So we want Zimpel
Will
Street.
be recused from the vote.
Yep. Goes back. Okay. It is a legal question.
Well,
Is there
this
such?
is from Nikki quickly. Here's it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I guess I'll leave it to your discretion whether you want to vote or not, and we'll. I don't think one of those makes no sense, same things either way. No, I understand that.
Projects where
Right. Okay, the third item on today's agenda is consideration of design review 005-25, located at 7221 Zimpel Street. This request is for an administrative design review in accordance with Article 4, Section 4.5, and Article 18, Section 18.30 of the CZO for new construction of a 4-unit multifamily affordable home in the University Area Off-Street Parking Overlay District. We have Zach Smith signed up to speak on behalf of the application. The city planner assigned to this case is Bria Dixon. As a reminder, following the staff presentation, the applicant will have 10 minutes to present. And anyone here to speak in opposition, or did I have 3 cards for you? You'll have 2 minutes each for speaking.
One of them is for nothing. One of them is for class, I think.
Go ahead.
This request is an administrative design review, recording as part of the board, section 4.5. For the construction of a 4-unit, 3-bedroom, 20-unit, small multi-family affordable residence located in the University Area Design Overlay District. It's also subject to the review standards of Article 11, section 11.3B. The building design standards for H2 RU2 historic preservation and residential district. The site generally complies with the building design standard found in Article 11, section 11.3 A2A. Recently, I just passed out plans, we received them yesterday, at 5 p.m. that had, issued comments regarding the mapping of the structure, being compliant, with the other developments nearby in the HURD2 district. As an interior site, the 2-story development is mostly flat and square, however, the revised plans show that there have been some modifications to the articulation, which do break up the mapping. With the addition of additional slopes in the roof, as well as a cutout towards the right side of the facade. And generally, there were concerns over the respect for the historical business context of development immediately in the area, where not necessarily, where old developments immediately adjacent were designed with larger and longer windows in the front from floor to ceiling typically, which also helps reduce the massing.
Thank you, Bria.
Yeah, Zach Smith, I have with me Owen Sketchler and Laura Barth. Owen's gonna do a little presentation on just some of the architecture in a second. But fundamentally, we appreciate the staff's initial comments. I know there was a lot of back and forth. There were some comments that turned out to be incorrect in terms of walking through, or just needed additional clarity in terms of some of the original comments. And obviously, those weren't even mentioned today, so I know that they've been taken off. But fundamentally, we have this project in front of us. We believe with some of the design changes, and again, everybody has essentially this in front of them. If you don't have a paper copy, we brought extra, in case anybody needs it. See some of these contextual items, but these go to great length to show things on the square and within 3 blocks of multifamily, to show that this 2-story development, especially with the architectural changes that the team has come up with, have responded to all the comments that we've received so far from the City Planning Commission. And we believe that this project is compliant. And of course, we're going to hope that today we can get an approval from this committee. Owen, you do just a
Yeah,
reason.
I'll keep it brief, but it's just a small multifamily affordable project here. 4 units, 3-bed, 2.5 bath, and the zoning regulations here. 6,400 square feet. We subdivided these lots. This lot on Zimpel has been vacant for quite some time. So the property owner had bought it and the adjacent building, and he's renovating the adjacent building on the corner lot, which we'll see later today. But Bria sent some comments back. Again, we whittled them down in terms of identifying what that front yard needed to be and the building height. So we made those changes to the roof slope and made that happen. And yeah, we're a little pressed for time, but we did want to take a stab at that front elevation massing. Once we kind of looked at everything around the neighborhood, the comments kind of made a little more sense to me, and I saw some opportunities to break up that massing, which we did. Otherwise, I think the plans are pretty solid and achieve what the owner was looking to do in terms of creating an up-down unit in the middle and a top unit, lower unit in the middle, and then a 2-story unit on the ends, so that it has a good addressing to the front rear yard. So if you have any questions, feel free to.
Can we get a couple more of those?
Oh, yeah.
overview, please?
Couple of questions.
Well, we do have a public comment.
You want to do that first?
Yes.
Do the first?
I would do the committee comments first and then
Oh.
comment.
My first question is regarding the setback. It looks like, this proposed building is a little bit further forward. than the Building of a, and there's another existing building. I was wondering if it's not shown in the site plan. I was wondering how it lines up in terms of the front of the building,
Sure.
with the adjacent building that's not shown.
Yeah, and Bria and I had worked this out in a separate PDF, because she had an adjacent survey of the lot at 7215 here. And there was some confusion because I think the face of the wall is 14 feet or something like that. But the actual porch and the roof comes out to 7 feet. And the existing property, I think it's 14, so we averaged those and, added the 3 feet that's allowed to get to the 8.
I do think the revisions, are substantial improvement to the proposal. I think that helped break down the math a great deal, and, I was wondering, in the elevation where, in the porch portion of the building, I was wondering if the setback to the main mass of the building could be increased a little bit. It looks like it's maybe 6 inches at this point.
I think we've got a foot there, but yeah, I think there is probably potential squeeze. It's pretty tight, without having, I think it would be possible with some kind of interior plan revisions to squeeze out another foot.
I think it's helping to break down the massing, but it's so superficial that I don't think it's doing the job, and I think it's been more effective and better.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and again, this was a sort of a quick attempt to achieve something, but if I were to rework the interior units, and squeeze some space there, I think we could steal a foot or two and get that to maybe as much as 3 feet if we move it to.
The depth of the porch in front. Anything like that?
I want to say, take a look, dimensions here, but to me, it looks about 6 feet.
That's ample space for it to be usable. Sometimes if they're too.
Oh, yeah. 5 and 4, that's pretty tight with any chairs and everything.
Kind of comment with you, in terms of allowing it to fit in with the neighborhood. I find that the board and batten vertical siding is fairly, a lot of new construction has utilized it, but I don't think successfully.
Sure.
Because New Orleans is made up of a lot of, horizontal, horizontal siding. And I think that this could blend in with the existing buildings if it continues that material.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something I probably, if I had a little more time, would have revisited with the, kind of the revised front. I think once we broke up the massing, the horizontal siding would have looked more appealing on it. And then also when I got a lot of these other adjacent buildings on here, I'm thinking, oh, well, you could look at stucco arches or something, but it seems like kind of a far reach, especially with the way stucco looks these days. It doesn't quite look like plaster, so.
I don't think the way that the design that centers would be indicated,
So just horizontal.
you just regular flat siding, where it's blend into the existing.
Well, since it was mentioned earlier, do you see, there would be no problem with us doing taller windows. Do you see a need for that here based on your opinion? Because I see we could go, especially on the left side of the mast, we could make those windows a foot taller at least, I didn't know if it needed to go full gallery style. If it was necessary.
Rather, the windows themselves, I mean, I guess if I were going to speak to windows, I would hope that you would use, something as close to a traditional wood recessed window detail.
Yeah, true divided.
Rather than,
recessed on the front.
surface mounted window detail.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd rather the details of the window be beefed up than the sides of the window.
Of course. Okay.
That's just those are my own thoughts.
So to summarize, since the porch was seemed to be doable, looking at a greater kind of setback rather than that foot, so that there's a more pronounced.
Well, just so it's
Break
aligned with the adjacent properties rather than private, then I think that these.
Switching Okay, switching to horizontal siding and, not so much the size of the window, but making sure that there's detail in the recession, and I think all three of those we can absolutely agree to.
That's what the setback really.
I'm not sure if you've got room to maneuver
Yeah,
your plan, but
like-
and this is allowed by zoning, so I can't really. I think it'd be preferable if it was aligned with the adjacent property.
Definitely guarantee we get another foot out of it, you know, and I think. Well, I would say the adjacent property to the right, if it's being at 7, this is already, you know, back from that. So it wouldn't necessarily be a line, it should be already a foot back from the adjacent or right about there. But I definitely think we get another foot in there for you, no problem.
To sum that up, I mean, we can push it to the max zone to make it close while not deviating from what the zoning allows for the plus minus 3 of the average. That's as acceptable as possible.
I have a question about.
And that's it.
In the renderings, it looks like there's 2 driveways possibly that are being, taken away. With this build.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
I would love to see, and I'm frankly not familiar to understand what the process of this, but of, restoring that curve. Just because I feel like,
Oh, most definitely.
okay, cool.
We don't intend to leave the curb cuts there.
Yeah. I don't think there's much comment.
Oh,
Or those.
146 wants to delay your comment.
I just don't want college kids parking on the sidewalk.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Good question. I'm looking at, I agree with Eleanor's observations on the aesthetic pieces of where you have made some improvements on your alternate proposed front elevation. I think that really improves a whole lot. I'm also looking at, you all talked a little bit about fenestration. So I'm looking at some of the examples of the photographs that you provided. You know, I'm looking at E and J. And I'm saying there's something about the proportionalities on the opening that there's something missing there. And I'm not overly comfortable with the 3 windows of facing it. It appears more suburban than urban. So if we can try to sort of emulate what the historic context is, either in B or in J or K, I think really helps a lot more because it's more in an urban context there than it is anywhere else. And I'm not sure if trying to place a balcony is of any consequence there. I see the porch at the bottom. There's nothing from that semi-private, quasi-public area up on the upper levels. I don't see balconies, I don't see porches or anything of that nature on the upper levels. I don't know if you can attain that or not. I'm just looking at it
Yeah.
purely on an aesthetic level.
Well, I'd say in response, I don't know that we'd have the opportunity with the plans and the program of this project to necessarily create an upper porch just because of the way the units configure with the upstairs, downstairs. However, I think your point is well made that the groupings of the windows is a little bit off from what you see in the neighborhood. While there are some examples of some spaced out windows, there's definitely more of groupings of windows that create a horizontal effect. So I think that could definitely be achieved, you know, by grouping some of the windows together. Maybe at the top, we have a, you know, a group of 3 on the left side. I want to say there's a bathroom where that far right window is above the front door, so I'd have to reevaluate that or do something tricky eye there, but even on the right side, you know, maybe pushing those windows together to achieve more of a horizontal effect.
Yeah.
Might be more what you're looking for there.
Yeah, I'm looking at it from the perspective that your upper floors in the neighborhood context are lighter in mass than they are on the lower floors. Your example here shows that it's top heavy. The center of gravity is off.
Yeah.
So
I'm
I'm
saying
just
that-
reacting to that. I'm just
Yeah.
reacting to that.
I've countered that with a few examples that are top heavy, you know, if you look at G, the building on the right there is top
Yeah.
heavy. At H, you got the top heavy, one with a similar roof style and the shake, so. There's a lot of variety, and again, this is a small sample of what's actually out there. I think I could probably find some top heavy ones if I was starting to look for that. I just kind of combed the neighborhood quickly and put together this document with that time, but I think you make some good points in terms of
So
demonstration.
is this project up for permitting at safety and permits, or is this still under review by?
So this, it has to go through here first and see.
Okay.
First, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, bunch of minutes.
Are there any other comments? Okay, we have anyone here in support of this item? We have one comment in opposition. Ms. Susan Johnson.
Susan Johnson, 2822 of Page Street, Carrollton, Watch. Here. Is it possible to defer this project for the next session? Or will it be approved or denied today? Is it up for approval? I can't.
We haven't made a motion yet,
Uh-huh.
so it's possible, but we haven't come to that decision yet.
Okay. Well, the neighborhood objects to this project. I mean, it practically goes without saying, it's going to completely overmass this of the building next to it, and I understand that the zoning is permitted, and as SMFA, number one, number two, that SMFA is, as a zoning issue, is not up for discussion here in this in design. The problem is the use and design of these two buildings is premised on SMFA. So the reason they can develop the hell out of this corner is SMFA. The problem with SMFA, as it has been practiced in this neighborhood by this team, Zach Smith, James Walt, who appears as the owner of these buildings, and also the owner of 1808 Lower Line and 7417 View. And then there was another person on the team, Nick Bustani, his name, real estate agent, his name showed up in 1808 Lower Line. Work, and also in this project, the problem is.
John, you're at 2 minutes.
The problem is the affordable housing unit is fraudulently rented at 7417 View. It has not been resolved. It's been rented at a premium rate since June of 2024. And there's also fraud by the student occupant at 1808 Lower Line that's not documented yet. So they're working on this, building up this triple lot. And SMFA is unenforceable, apparently. I mean,
It's been over 2 minutes, so we gotta cut you off there.
Period.
Yeah,
That's the end of my comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no other public comments for this item. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval with the comments made by this committee. I would encourage, you to look into raising the height of the windows on the front facade in addition to the detailing. I think that would help. Mitigate some of the mass in the front as well as other comments that have been made here.
Motion for approval with CPC from the comments from this meeting. And do we have a second? Second from Parkways. All in favor? And any opposed? Motion carries.
Cool.
Okay, the fourth item on today's agenda is the consideration of design review 006-25 located at 7229 Zimpel Street. This request is for an administrative design review in accordance with Article 4, Section 4.5 and Article 18, Section 18.30 of the CZO for new construction of a 4-unit multifamily affordable housing in a university area off-street parking overlay district. We have Zach Smith signed up to speak on behalf of the application, and the signer assigned is Ava Monet. As a reminder, the following staff presentation, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present.
Design review 625 will be analyzed in accordance with the University Area Design Overlay Standard, the Building Design Standard, and Design Review Approval Standard. As it pertains to the overlay standard, the property is in an HURD2 district and has an addition greater than 15%, requiring design review process. A requirement of the overlay district is that the maximum height of any structure or addition or enlargement of an existing structure is limited to no more than 30 feet or to 3 feet higher than the taller of the taller than the immediate adjacent structures, whichever is left. Staff has been provided a site plan indicating that the height of the structure is 30 feet. In addition, the architect has stated that in an email that the addition is not more than 3 feet taller than the adjacent property. As it pertains to the building standards for an HURD2, the property is on a corner lot, which clearly identified with entries marked by architectural elements facing both Zimpel and pine. The facade is consistent in color and design. The one window on Zimpel on the Zimpel facade is not consistent with the window on the pine side, but this is due to that singular window being a retrofit for what was previously a door. The overlay is intended to create consistency and scale of new and existing development. The addition, though, is inconsistent in scale with the existing part of the building facade because of the roof line is offset, as are the heights of the windows and the first floor level. This is an unsuccessful design from a design perspective, and the new addition should be designed to read as a continuation of the existing design.
Thank you, Ava.
So this project, basically is in a fourplex. Actually, one of my old closest friends used to live in the upper right side of this one, so I spent some time in it. But they had 2 units downstairs that would often flood and are below flood elevation. So, in response to the massing here, I would say that it's a challenge because we have to raise the addition above flood elevation, where you have the front main level lifted up probably 8 or 9 feet. So the substandard floor level at the front main part of the house is basically moot and becomes storage because we can't raise the whole thing. So yes, there is a bump up at the new addition for the floor line, but it's really driven by the flood elevation and the necessity to raise the new floor level up 3 feet. Again, similar to the last project, we've got 4 units in this thing. I believe the front unit is just 2 bedrooms, however, so we're a couple bedrooms less than the 12 allowable. I think we're at 10 here. And then we've treated this in order to address the corner lot there. We've we've treated these things like townhouses so that they each have their own entry point, and we've created a long porch along the facade to address the corner. And I believe like there was a rendering provided as well, but the, yeah, there was another one sent,
There you go.
but we had one that was more dressed up photorealistic, so that's how it is.
But is this an updated version of the plans that were submitted initially?
Well, so this had been submitted to Bria, over a week ago, and she had done her counts and her review based on these. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
However,
I haven't seen it before. Can you talk us through the changes that have been made?
yeah, so the previous design, I'll just follow that one. The previous design had more of enclosures here where there was more massing and little punched in porches. And we decided to push that wall back and open it up so that I have one continuous porch in order to better address the corner lot. Have more architectural elements on that side.
So this isn't what's on the website.
No.
This was updated based on some initial comments, feedback.
And you guys don't have any printouts for us to look at for this one?
No, there's break prints. Because the ones that were on the website are what Laura had printed and I saw them and I was like, these are outdated. So,
We just, the committee hasn't seen these images, so.
yeah. And Ava, you don't have the rendering that was sent.
I
I
have,
can find it.
I have this.
Yeah, there was a, let me find it. I'll send it to you.
I turned it right. You can see it better.
Sure.
Oh, you-
You found it?
with this thing.
No.
We call it some elevation further down.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, so we can see the alignment of the building.
Elevation is that?
Yeah. Yeah, trying to find one here. Okay, will you zoom in on that?
This one.
Yeah.
In particular.
So can you talk us through the changes? Because from what we've seen, there really wasn't alignment between the front of the building and the
Yeah, so
addition.
those comments were never received. Frankly, I think Ava got the Science Project Friday, is that right? Last Friday.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This project hit your desk last Friday.
No, the new plans came in, I don't know. Not last Friday.
Well, so we never received any comments on this one. We had 0 comments leading up to this meeting, and we didn't hear anything from the reviewer until Friday. So we didn't have time to make any adjustments. We made the porch changes on our own accord after getting feedback from the new construction weeks ago.
Sure.
That helps. So we,
Yeah, the
we
purpose
never,
of this
we never
meeting
heard
is
this.
to provide the comments, so
Yep.
you might not have received comments, but that's
Oh,
what the
yeah.
purpose of today is, so.
Yeah.
What our committee members have seen was the original submission, which is that the new addition was substantially higher in the back and the floors were not aligned. So what we're looking at now, can you talk us through the
Sure.
changes to what that initial submission was?
Well, so the feedback, the comments about the floors never being aligned were never sent to us, so that wasn't anything we ever responded to. However, the necessity of raising the new first floor up 3 feet drives the separation of the new addition in the front, because the existing is too low, and if we were to raise everything up that 7, 8 feet, there would be no potential to do any 2-story addition in the back. So, again, these are the first time we're hearing these comments, so.
Just walk through the plan. So this is the demo plan.
Yeah, so this is the demo
Can you
plan.
scroll down to the next page?
Yeah,
That's
these are old. These are the old ones.
team on this one for the, out of respect to the committee's time, especially with some failures on our part to bring the updated printed copies. I would love to make sure not to waste any additional time and say if there's any other comments, knowing that there's a general change to some of these elements that have been brought up today. Are we here?
Yeah, this is the right side. So,
We're on the right side.
so here you see that we basically have 3 townhouse style units in the back. We're leaving the front upstairs units to be turning that into 1 unit. So on the left side, you're seeing what is the existing second floor unit on the left side. And that's gonna remain a unit, but we're doing 3 townhouse style on the back. And they have, porch access along that corner side. Kitchen, 1 bedroom downstairs and 2 bedrooms upstairs. And I think the comment that I am concerned about today is, even with deferral, is that, to create a new first floor level, we would like to do that at 3 feet. And, we'd like to make this thing 2 stories so that we can develop this property in a way that it deserves. And we're keeping the demo under 50%, and maintaining the front facade and as much of the building as we can. However, just due to the constraints of the flood elevation and this necessity to bring that thing up 3 feet, it's really hard to imagine developing this property and leaving the floor levels as is, because it's too low.
I don't have much of an issue with these offset in height. And that's what I find most problematic about this iteration, that you're sort of taking what is the side of a building and turning it into a front
Mhm.
Of a condo unit. So you've got 2 buildings sort of mashed together, rather than, I think it needs to be treated as a side elevation of the building, with a lack of emphasis and continued, sort of vocabulary and organization of building as it exists.
That being said, do you think the first iteration was closer to that because we had subdued the side porch more?
I have an issue with the first iteration. I think the problem was that side addition. And my comment was gonna be that, I think adding to the rear of it, having it be a taller entity, I think there's plenty of precedent for that around north. But the side addition is problematic, and continuing that side edge of the building, I think is valid, and going higher is valid, but it needs to be continue to be treated in the vocabulary of the side of the building rather than creating a new front to it. They can that street. It can have entry doors, but like we have existing, they're sort of secondary, they're quiet, they have a
Yeah,
roof. but
Just
that's
an awning over it,
not really
maybe.
a porch, it's not.
Yeah.
So that is a little bit more respectful to the people.
Yeah, would you flip back to the first iteration without the porch? Thank y'all for going back. I mean, is that more subdued, or do you feel like
Yeah.
that second roof line is
It
still
is
too
that
much?
Side addition,
And to
Okay.
have doors.
the bump out.
Yeah, so if that bump out, if it was
Went away.
flush
Mhm.
and just had doors, create this,
If that's something that,
Lenore, how do you feel about the offset with the heights?
I mean, I don't think any of this is ideal. I'm just trying to make it better than it is. I don't know if we're in a world where we can deny it, you tell me. I'd rather they not demolish, but we can get 41% of it built this. But if they're allowed to do that, and they're gonna build it. Just maintaining as much of the rhythm and pattern in the work structure. That's it. But if we can deny it,
Yeah, I mean, my concern is that, like, for your traditional camelback, that larger rear is so small in proportion to the front part. I kind of feel like this needs to go all one direction or the other, so essentially demo, more than 50% of it and kind of continue that new roof line forward, or start it much farther back.
We've been doing a lot of things in work. Because basically, we probably, as long as you keep the first two original rooms. Build, camelback additions and. It is basically what this is, and so I guess I'm used to taking these types of applications for through.
Is there usually, I mean, I think the roof line is one thing, but then the sort of offset window levels compounds it. In the cases you have seen is,
Well,
through the
usually
window
this
line?
would be a whole floor up, so you're
Yeah.
responding to its lack of height, right? But it would be a full floor. Up would be a typical camelback geometry. I think it's the lack of differentiation that I think you're responding.
Yeah, I think this is a situation where the rules of the overlay kind of are fighting against, what you would traditionally do in an HDLC neighborhood for a camelback or super blind. Because I've done a lot of these in HDLC neighborhoods before, where the necessity is to raise that rear. But because of the 30-foot height restriction and the being within 3 feet, you kind of, you have to limit your ceiling heights and your floor to floors, and you're limited by the proportionality of the overlay rule.
Right, and typically, it is in the.
Right.
And I agree, it's not, I also have heartburn about it, but I'm not sure. But if we can. It ultimately, I think it would be great just to abandon the basement level. That's rehabilitate the living floor.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely things we could do if we had the threshold to go beyond 50% to reduce the, the basement level's effect as a living space on the design.
Eleanor, have you seen anything exactly like this? Because my worry is that it sets sort of a bad precedent for this type of design in this area.
I have not,
Okay.
and I don't disagree. But we have, because of what with raised basements, the issue is a lot of people are either raising raised basements or we're recommending that you abandon the basement level and capture additional square footage. So we have seen additions to raised basements that do go up another floor in the rear to recapture that square footage, which I think is a valid approach to keeping these buildings and making them sustainable. Usually it's a taller addition, and usually it's set back a bit further from the front of the building. This, if it was set back further, I think would be preferable. They kept more of the original historic building, I think would be preferable. It wouldn't be as uncomfortable of a situation.
Yeah, I just want to say that, I agree with everything I'm saying here, and I'm just asking the community to understand that, this is an overlay driven design because of the rules, and while there might not be precedent for it, I can certainly tell you that you will see more of these moving forward because of the 30-foot height restriction, because people are going to want to build additions in the rear that are above flood elevation, and, again, yeah, typically the camelback would be higher, but we can move it higher because of the 30-foot restriction and all that.
Would you reduce your program and set the addition for?
That's an owner call,
We'll explore that.
we can explore with the owner.
Be a
but-
preferable.
Sure.
The addition is larger than the building. but maybe not like-
Yeah, we did go 2 bays back, as we would in an HLC job, but I understand the concerns. For us, we're the designers, and, it's about the program and the owner program and what their line is, what their boundaries. So we'll talk to them.
That'd be great. I mean, you could push it back over there. Because you can.
Understood.
I really appreciate the context of if this was not a corner lot, it just wouldn't jump out at anybody to see.
If it is a kind of lot.
The constraints are the constraints.
Are there any more comments? We do have, a public comments. Does the committee have anything else? Is there anyone in support of this item? We do have one part in opposition, Ms. Susan Johnson. You have 2 minutes.
Johnson, 2822, Carroll, not be here. This, for context, this, development is these two developments are surrounded by most of the residential and not many homeowners left. I don't suppose the applicable values on the corner of, Broadway and Zimpel was going to be a big challenge to the development, but I do want to say that, the choice of SMFA, they can maximize the density of the properties, so we've got 24 bedrooms, no additional parking because of SMFA. How is that gonna work? And, I also want to just parse this, small multifamily housing, acronym or name of the housing model. This is not small, this is not multifamily, and it's not affordable. And we're gonna track the rents and come up with fraud. I mean, if there is any fraud, all right. We found fraud in 2 other instances. We're going to be following this. If this is the big brass ring or golden loophole to get around the university area overlay. No parking. Great. You know, this is the decline of the neighborhood is exemplified in these developments. So there's one other term that
That's your 2 minutes,
given the
Ms.
light
Johnson.
to, and that is city planning. This is not city planning. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
I'm in relation to the growth.
Second.
I second.
Okay. HCLC with a motion to defer. CPC seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, everyone, we're on item 5 today.
Is it okay if I sit everything? Me to sit.
Probably where you are, I see you.
And I'll just preface again, I didn't realize that the new items were not submitted, so no one had a chance to review the last item, but similar here, the committee hasn't seen the newest revision of it. So we can talk over that, but we are on item 5. The 5th item on today's agenda is the consideration of zoning docket 075-19 located at 4100 Royal Street. This request is for an administrative design review in accordance with Article 4, Section 4.5 of the CZO for changes to the design of proposed affordable housing plan development over 40,000 square feet. We have Nicole Weber signed to speak on behalf of this application. The city planner assigned for this case is Stephen Kroll. As a reminder, following the staff presentation, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present.
Well, I'll just quickly present this. I would say the history here kind of goes back several years. And about 2019, the city council, following DOC review, approved a a different version of this proposal that was larger in scale. It was a store structure that occupied virtually the entire site. Roughly H shaped footprint, parking internalized in the center. It was to contain 136 residential units. Due to changes in the development environment and cost increases over the last several years, the overall size of the development has been reduced. It will still be a 4-story mass, but on a smaller footprint. The massing is primarily along charters and Maison, and service parking is upper rear. The design scheme is generally similar to the previous scheme, in that it uses changes in materials, planning, banding, and balconies to break up the structure's massing. The most significant difference is that the previous version had facade elements on the Front Street side elevation that were intended to mimic smaller historic buildings back on the France side of the site. And that has been removed as part of the overall downsizing of the project. This is before DAC because it has over 40,000 square feet of area.
Thank you. Stephen, Nicole?
So the documents that I just passed out are timelines of all the entitlement and review processes that we have been through in the past 7 years. We say we want affordable housing. This is Hano-owned property, but yet at every turn, there's more red tape. Not only did we have 38 meetings prior to the AHPD getting reviewed, that included several design review meetings. It is all advisory because, may I remind you, this is publicly owned land by Hano. The current plan that is before you is what went through a 5-year FEMA review, FEMA 106 review process, in which SHPO and other federal and state agencies were involved, and consulting parties, including Mr. Brown sitting behind me, participated in all these meetings. And that is shown in this timeline from 2019. Actually, it started prior to that, but in the 2019 to 2025 timeline. And so because this is publicly owned land, owned by Hano, because of the financing that and bonding and different things that we have to go through for the affordable housing development, we are tied to what was reviewed under that 106 review process, which, as you can see, took several years. Once we got out and finally got the final first amended MOA, then we rebid the project, at which time, obviously, construction costs had significantly increased since 2018, 2019. And so we had to rebid the project, and that's when the number of units had to be reduced from 136 to 82. Considering the circumstances that we are currently under, with changes going through with the federal government, tariffs and different things, we are trying to get this project built this year. City Council granted us an extension just a few weeks ago. And so our plan is to move forward and begin construction this year.
Thank you. Questions?
Yeah, so it's in the site plans, or some similar site plans been approved by this committee. I'm just wondering about like the guy point the driveway on charters jumps out is that it appears to be in conflict with an energy pole right there. And then you're showing two stoops.
So the location of the existing building has not changed. The ingress egress for the parking lot was dictated by the AHPD, which only allows ingress and egress from that location on Charter Street. And we have already gone through, in terms of this building that you're looking at, any review was already done previously in the prior DAC and AHPD review. So the only thing the reason why we're here today is because it was the opinion of CPC staff that we were to come back through DAC merely because of the reduction in the number of units, but we're still at over 40,000 square feet. So the portion that was along Royal and France in the upper right-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, that portion of the building was omitted entirely for us to reduce the number of units from 136 to 82. So otherwise, all locations of the building as shown on the site plan are existing and have already been through DAC and parts review. So, but
You know, gonna get a servitude or anything for the stoops on Charter Street and on
there's no,
Charter Street?
there's. Oops. There's no,
You see steps on Charter Street, even on the lower left-hand corner.
I'm
On the
sorry.
lower left-hand corner.
You want me to zoom in?
I believe that might be that landscaping, but
Like two steps.
I mean, I guess the sort of overall point as with any building anywhere in the city, if there are any portions of the structure, including stoops that encroach into the public right of way, you just need to get air rights through real estate, as part of the permitting process.
yeah, and my understanding, there's no projections or like the public right away. I know this is, kind of like a combination of landscaping and site plan.
Those two projections right there. One of the building. They're like seven landing. They're on the side street.
Projections at all?
I-
I have to get a certain few if they forget.
I do, just because charter sidewalk is only 8 feet wide, and so. And then you come right up onto it, so it's a weird section.
You know, I think you could probably just scoot it back off of charters a few feet if there are projections.
Yeah, I mean, there's projections and they're necessary then, but I'm not aware of any projections. So, but if there are, then yeah, obviously through the permitting process, that would be required.
Yeah, I just don't want to get to a place where the building looks good.
Yeah.
With the doors, landing on the building side. Shown.
Yeah, there's no like ingress egress along the building along that side in terms of, I mean, it's all windows.
Can we see that elevation on that,
On that
on the
left
Charter Street side, please? On the side?
Three doors on the charter. The elevation.
chart on the Mazant corner,
Well, there's one at the west end of the building.
If we'll go to the drawing unit, second bill.
I'm sorry, y'all.
I'm seeing a couple of stoops on the left side and then the one on the right side. I think
Yep.
I would hate for this to like bog down the meeting too much. The way of remedying this is either to get a leaf of the air rights.
or to.
Or to scoot this building 5 feet, and we've got plenty of space to do that, so.
Exactly, and I'll make a note of that and inquire with the architect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the concern is that if the sidewalks are drawn like out of scale, I think they're all on the site plan, you know, I just don't want it to come to a place where like. Where you have to have the sidewalk with like a 5
Right.
plan.
Yeah, no, that makes
You
sense.
know. Like I said, there appears to be an energy conflict at the driveway.
As far as HDLC is concerned, I think it's an open question because the HDLC meeting was so many years ago and the design has changed substantially. Yes, everyone is in favor of affordable housing, they also have to follow laws that are followed. So I think there's an open question as to whether or not. So, that's through the HDLC process. That's a discussion that we're having informally. And I'll have answers for it soon. But if I were to make a comment about this design, which
here. I think it's very odd that we now have, balconies. But you don't have access to them, you have windows on the balcony.
There's no balconies. Talking about the Juliet balconies that
Yeah.
are on a previous iteration. It
Well,
was-
I'm looking at the drawings that we have been given, so this is the latest version. Okay. So
Yeah.
there are no balconies, all right. And then the only other comment would be, I think I understand the affordability issues and I just think the window to wall ratio, especially on that left hand, I mean, it's just, these windows are pretty small for the amount of wall. And there's window sizes, a little bit, I think it would help with and, on the Charter Street elevation where there's now a garage, I mean, a drive-through. I think it's weird to have the brick sort of at the second floor. Because that's sort of a grounding feature that you're including in the design, but you've got a void underneath it. So it's just sort of, but in kind of, like, modular, a little odd. So I think that would be better to be consistent with the rest of the building above in terms of reality. And those are my comments.
But to echo these comments, Ray and I spoke extensively about this budget this morning, and we just think that, you know, affordable housing, and I think the Bywater, like, deserves a little bit more of an interesting design, frankly. I think it's, you know, huge property, right, years in the works, right, and I think it, a little bit of like a cut and copy that we've seen elsewhere in the city, which is, not exciting and, you know, wouldn't really reflect the historical integrity of the neighborhood of Blue Line, especially in this area. Right, I think there's also concerns, you know, we'd really like to see that parking lot be permeable. Right now, it is just open giant piece of property that is really essential in my view, of water retention for the area.
Yeah, it's permeable.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a stormwater management.
Excellent. And I think also the parking reduction, right? I feel like that's a lot of parking. I'm just thinking. Candidly, frankly, it's a lot of parking that's included.
Well, that would require budget, yeah.
But I'm just candidly, and I think that's, you know, adding a lot of cars to this neighborhood, into this part of the Bywater is gonna be interesting, and especially, you know, I think as a larger, as a city, right, we can really focus on traffic on Charter Street. I know there's one camera down by Elizabeth's, but, car speed theory, right, and this is also one of the main entrance points into Crescent Park. Which, you know, is, as down there is not an easy crossing, you know, getting from this parcel to Crescent Park. Especially when the fog ends up with this.
Yeah, we have in the provisos for the HPD, there is, crosswalk, proviso and other kind of traffic mitigating.
I would echo Eleanor's comment about the brick or the drive-through. I think, trying to separate the two masses will be a better design approach. That's just my comment, from as purely an aesthetic point of view.
Does Hannah also, do they have a number of like, what, you know, is it all section 8? What is the, what are you talking about?
So the affordability, so we're required through the HPD to have, a certain percentage of units at 80% AMI or below, but we are 100% affordable. So when we reduce the number of units from 136 to 82, the market rate units were.
I will also agree with a lot of the comments, specifically Eleanor, when you talked about the window ratio. I feel that it's hard because seeing this design out of context of where it sits, is difficult because of the age of properties in the surrounding area. And also there's a very new development that is directly adjacent to this site. So there's a lot of units proposed here.
For City Square.
adjacent, not on the square. But I do think the reason why I'm saying that is because I don't feel that this design really reflects the surrounding area very well. It does lack detail. I think that there's been a lot of detail pulled back from what was originally presented, from my understanding. I definitely feel strongly with the size of those windows. They just feel very constrictive in a way. They present that and they visually, maybe from the inside, might feel that way. There's just a real flatness to this that doesn't really mimic the shapes and patterns, textures, anything material wise also in this area. I'm really familiar with this area. I live very close to it. I'm there almost daily. And so I think that this one is particularly tough in terms of the lack of detail that's presented here. And of course, I understand the constraints, but I was really hoping that this would maybe push for something more in terms of reflecting like the surrounding bywater. Is there any type of art or any other
Yeah,
details
there's
or
a public,
landscape?
yes, there's a public
Okay.
art aspect of it that we.
Can you-
went through
can you
with
speak to
360
that?
Review.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact detail, but there is requirements. So basically, when we went through 106 review and this came out of it, this was based off of federal agencies, state agencies, re-reviewing plans and making additional comments. So it's like we're working with two AHPD ordinances. We're working with two sets of provisos and conditions. And thanks to Mr. Brown sitting behind me, there's a lot of other constraints that were provided. We have made accommodations at every turn. So unless someone has an idea of how we can find money to build more affordable units here, this is the plan that has gone through a 7-year review. And at this point, enough's enough. Just gonna say it. We say we want affordable, but yet here we are going through the same exact thing that we went through in 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025. This is insane. So are we going to continue to allow individuals like the individual sitting behind me to deploy their tactics and cause the project to become so financially unfeasible after 7 years? I gotta say what I gotta say.
Let's keep it on topic so we can keep the meeting moving. All right, are there any other committee comments?
Yeah, just about trees. I see the selection of trees is really good selection. It's not keyed in on the plan, so we don't really know where they're like what size tree is going to go where, so it's hard for me to really assess anything about that. But the selection is good. I would just note that I see a detail for planters, but I don't know where they're supposed to be. I just want to make you aware that planters don't go into the landscape requirements.
Okay.
That's it.
Got it. Thank you.
Taking off of what Sarah made an observation of the existing building and you're putting this building is part of the existing building, correct?
There's no existing building. It's all.
Okay, it's all brand new. Okay.
So if I refer to existing, I was referring to the building as you see it was on the original plan development.
There's a new development next to where this is.
Yeah, then I would agree with your comment on the windows and pattern. Thank you.
Do we have any other comments?
I'm gonna make a motion for approval, referencing the comments that were made about looking into eliminating the brick cladding above the entryway, vehicular entryway of charters, look at the window to wall ratio. And noting that, I understand that this may or may not be subject to HDLC review. It is definitely subject to 106 review. It is definitely subject to SHPO review. and so recognizing the constraints under which you're operating. So that's my motion. Oh, I'm sorry. I made a motion before we received public comments, so I'll withdraw the motion for now.
We have one comment in support. That's Coweber. Do you want to?
No, no, it's-
We have one comment in opposition, Mr. Joseph Brown.
My name is Joseph Brown. I live across the street at 619 France Street. And you talked earlier about how the initially approved design had second and third floor, but it actually had 2 stories with a third and fourth floor stepped back on both France and Illinois. And this new design of 82 units on France Street, there is actually a 2-story building which houses the office and so on the corner of Charters in France, and then it becomes a 4-story building there. The ordinance that approved this, there were 23 provisos on it. And proviso number 13 says that the developer shall be limited to a maximum of 4 stories, but on a portion of the development fronting Royal and France Streets, the height shall be initially limited to 2 stories with the permissible 3rd and 4th floors stepped back. And it is not stepped back. 3rd and 4th stories on the 4-story section on France Street is not stepped back. So it's in violation of one of the provisos of the approved ordinance. So like you consider that in addition to all of the design comments that you all had. It's obviously still woefully out of context with a neighborhood of 1-story shotgun houses. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll make again that motion I've said a moment ago.
Motion by CPC with all of the suggestions from today. Do we have a second? HDLC for second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
1. So the motion does carry. Thank you.
Right.
Do you want me to speak the chords?
Got it. Oh, I do.
Okay, we're on item 6. The 6th item on today's agenda is the consideration of design review 007-25 located at 200 Henry Clay Avenue. The request is for an administrative design review in accordance with Article 4, Section 4.5 and Article 18, Section 18.15 of the CZO for new construction in EC Enhancement Corridor Design Overlay District. We have Rebecca Hurst signed to speak on behalf of the applicant. The city planner assigned to this is Alyssa White. As a reminder, following the staff presentation, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present.
Design Review 007-5 is for request for an addition to the currently existing children's hospital on the Orleans. This site is being developed as a portion of New Orleans Health and Safety Children's Hospital. Has proposed the addition of an imaginarium which can be described as a children's enrichment facility. This renovation is expected to have little impact on the surrounding area as it is an addition to a developed site and is situated at the edge of the Chapatoulas corridor facing. Being that this site is within the design overlay district, it is subject to those design review approval standards found in Article 18. Based on the nature of the proposed addition, staff has determined that this proposal meets the standards of compliance for conditional approval, subject to one provider. The applicant shall provide a detailed site plan that provides context to how the imaginarium integrates into the existing site and surrounding areas, showing the following elements but not limited to existing structures, new structures, entrances, exits, sidewalks, and structures. Additionally, staff has identified other items for consideration. Colors included in the design should be compatible with the development surrounding. Enlist the landscape designer or architect to assist with native and non-invasive varieties or creating an interactive kid-friendly garden. And provide a circulation plan defining pedestrian and vehicular movement with clear directional signage and marked pathways. With that, we would like to see some colorful, whimsical, maybe urban design elements incorporated into the crosswalk and signage.
Thank you so much. It's kind of Mike Sherman on behalf of the team, my colleague Becca Geiger here, our colleagues from SQB Ripple, from LCMC, from Children's Hospital, from Lemoyne Construction. This is a really special and fun project for us. This is a child enrichment center. This is a first of its kind facility. We know hospitals are not places children want to go. They have to go in difficult times. And this is a mini children's museum to bring joy and happiness to children, particularly those who are long-term stay children at the hospital. This started as a small project and grew to a really big project through a partnership with Kids Join the Fight. And we'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment because Walker Beery, a former patient at Children's Hospital who passed away, was the inspiration behind Kids Join the Fight. Yellow was his favorite color, and he was the inspiration behind this project and the Kids Join the Fight movement. So we look forward to sharing a little bit more about why the design choices were made. I want to hit the land use piece first. Interestingly, the EC corridor wasn't even mapped on the site. I guess there was a mapping issue, but we know we're in the EC corridor because we're on Chapatoulas. But that EC corridor is for Chapatoulas fronting properties. This is minimally visible from Chapatoulas. We're all the way back almost by Leak Avenue near our loading dock. And because we have a pedestrian bridge crossing Henry Clay, Children's Hospital leases Henry Clay. From the Chapatoulas corridor, we have an image. It is minimally visible, but we re-subdivided recently, thank you to city planning, to one lot of record. So because that one lot has frontage on Chapatoulas, we're here today and we're happy to be here. But I point that out because there's an institutional campus carve out from the design review criteria. There's actually a carve out in the CZO for institutional campuses. It doesn't apply here because you can see us, even though we're minimally visible from Chapatoulas. But this is part of our $350 million campus transformation that was recently complete. This is really the icing on the cake. And many of the ideas you talked about, whimsical, colorful, happy, that's what the campus transformation was about. So if you haven't seen Children's, we would love to offer visits for anyone that wants to come. It's light, it's airy, it's transparent, there's art throughout. It's actually a very happy place to embrace children and make them feel more comfortable. From a pedestrian plan that was mentioned, we have spent significant time with multiple departments, thank you, Lewis and others, on new signage, on changing the actual materiality used for pedestrian access. And we have full-time security actually helping pedestrians cross roads. So a pedestrian knows exactly where to go with brand new city planning approved signage. Thank you, Stephen and team. Tremendous landscaping, open space throughout the campus. So all of the things that city planning wants to see, the SVU DUMES team and the children's and the LCMC teams really embraced those and incorporated those. This is really a continuation of the curve that defines the Children's Hospital arc in the same scale. The design criteria demand that we have a unique entrance. We do that through color and materiality. I know the yellow color was mentioned. It's not only important to kids doing the fight and walker, it's important to us to distinguish that entrance from the emergency room and from the main entrance to the hospital. Lewis, we heard you on the sidewalk. We're connecting to a 6-foot sidewalk. Happy to follow up to see if there is a way consistent with grading to get that any wider. But we're connecting that 6-foot proposed sidewalk. If we can get it to 8, we're on board. The architects would like to follow up after this. My final request, and I'll turn it over to the EDR team, is we did get a little bit of a late start on design review because it wasn't initially mapped. So we're ready to break ground once we get your approval, and we hope that any additional issues that come up can be post a DAC approval, working with the individual departments. We'd like to be in the ground in the next few weeks.
Can you all tell us about the conversation we've had with Lewis about the sidewalk issue?
Sure, go ahead. Lewis, is this?
Yeah, Lewis gave some feedback, quick feedback yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just widening one of the sidewalks.
Simple, the sidewalk, there's an existing sidewalk on the site that's basically gonna be, this new building development, it's kind of put on top of that. That was an 8-foot sidewalk, that connected to the sidewalk a little better than I think this one does, just that the very minor stuff, like just clearing out a little bit of the sidewalk. The 6.5 is, I thought was jumped out at me on the site plan, just proportion small. I thought it looked better. So that was my only comment. Well, yeah, of course, it's just commentary, we told the real site plan. That was the design. I just explained to them that would be my comment.
We appreciate it.
Is that your presentation or?
Yeah, you want to share anything else? We want to be responsive to your concerns. I know folks have looked at this. We thank you all for looking at it ahead of time.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Collins. I'm with Goines Ripple, senior project architect there, and have been on this project a fair amount of the time. I think just to kind of reiterate, as far as materiality, we wanted pops of color to signify the entry, as well as on the south wall, there's a metal panel wall that is the same paneling system that's on the existing. But we did add color to it, whereas at the existing, majority of it is more kind of a neutral color. But we did want to bring that color and have it wrap around that end of the building. But it was also because why maybe we were a little more selective where we used color was because on the interior of the space, we want it to be highly visible from the exterior looking in. There's children's exhibits in there. There's a float, an interactive float, Mardi Gras float that's going in there, that's being done in conjunction with current studio. Saints have an area that they are utilizing with artificial turf. There's going to be graphics on the walls. So while, yes, we wanted the exterior to have some playfulness, we also wanted to be able to highlight the interiors as well. In addition, we thought it was best that we also take the language of the existing concourse and continue that around. And so all our datums are set at the same elevations as the concourse. The material, the curved glass, framing, that is all existing materials that we've completed the end of the building with.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions, comments?
Yeah, well, what are the trees that are gonna be relocated? What species are they and where are they going?
So the trees that are out there are pretty immature. They're smaller. I think part of that is also working in conjunction with children's. That may be something that is actually will either be in this contract or it may potentially be something that they do self-perform that work. And as far as I know, would be relocated throughout the campus. As far as the varietals, magnolias. Now, whether they're silver magnolias or true southern magnolias, I don't know.
We just felt like they were placed in there. I'm Martin Johnson with LC Music, but we felt like they were placed in the
completion of that project was say 3 years ago.
That's about right.
So we thought it was a shame just to destroy those
You
trees.
zoom
From
in,
that,
I'm
so we were
Definitely, definitely.
to relocate them on that campus itself. There's always need for trees and that we've identified as small, but then if we could do that, if we were not going to just slow them. I like they were still what they used to be.
No, that's great. And I'm all on board with the landscape plan. I would just urge caution with transplanting, if there's something, certainly urge caution because they're fragile.
Right. Yeah. So, but even if we transplanted and lost one, at least we have a potential to try to save that tree.
This rendering here shows the yellow piece of the building that pops up to have a three-dimensional piece that sort of is taking or sheltering something on the inside. But your first rendering shows it more as a two-dimensional piece going up like a sign. So which is it?
Yeah, and so unfortunately, it was just the way the view was taken. Short answer is yes, it is three-dimensional. That the one where it looks like a billboard, it just happened to be that view angle that we took just caught it exactly where the walls were projecting behind and where you're going back and you do not see on the map view.
So when I look at that other earlier rendering that we saw, the yellow pop out, is that limited as some kind of a skylight, clear story kind of a thing
Yeah, so
for the interior space?
Sorry. Yes, it is. It's actually a fairly large volume in there. So it's where the main monumental stair is from the entry lobby into from the exterior as well as from the end of the concourse are two entry points. So it's a common kind of mixing area for circulation and there's an office component and then a classroom component on the second floor, but it's a double volume height. So if you're on the first floor, it's a clear opening all the way up to the second. And then we do have a clear story on the backside for additional lighting.
Is there an intent or is there a desire that this two-story structure might actually expand? Because I'm seeing different four-story structures, three-story structures, and five-story structures up there in the background.
Sure.
So I just want to make sure that what you're presenting is the limit of any future expansion.
Yes, a very valid question. The structural design is not designed in a manner that would allow for future expansion on top of the building. We're capped, that is the cap of this addition.
Is the slab that it's a flat floor slab. So is that designed for roof load or is that designed for live load as a floor at all?
So I'm sorry, which floor line, the second floor
The-
itself or?
No, the roof.
The roof is only roof deck, so it's just metal deck. There's with framing, structural framing, but no loads for.
No roads for
any
floors,
additional.
for future floors.
So on the LCMC side, the program did not include any future expansion on top of that building. It's what Matt's saying. So it was not part of the program nor to the desire to have that. So the illusion of that little bump up is to allow for future floors, not, it's an aesthetic item for the volume inside. From our side, there's no plan.
No, you answered my question because I was concerned about what the future might look like.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
It's got this nice, pretty hat at the top of the other building, and I'm trying to sort of visualize where that might actually
We
fall.
understand your comment, but no, it is not designed.
We completed our master plan update pretty recently, had good community input, appreciate city planning's support on that process. So we identified areas where there would be future expansion and none of it is right here outside of the imaginary.
My last comment would be on your site plan, you showed the curve around the crescent slightly set back. The curve is more kind of it's not hugging the Crescent roadway. So I wondered whether there was a purposeful part on your design to make it more tangential to the existing curve.
Sure. So part of that, as you allude to, is that the existing curve, we were just completing that. So what that radius was is kind of how it fell onto the site, or when you were to trace that across the site, which became the front of our addition. Likewise, we were trying to maintain as much green space as we could from the street side of things. Because we are obviously on kind of a postage size, stamp size lot, not a lot of green space available, so we were trying to maximize what we could while maintaining the integrity of the existing building.
Yeah, the reason why I reacted in that manner is because it's an urban site, it is an urban institution. And most urban institutional buildings tend to sort of hug the street a little bit, so it gives you that pedestrian capacity. And I'm just reacting to that, you know. I'm familiar with the campus, but I just wanted to sort of.
Yes.
Well-received point, the campus transformation, added a coffee shop, added pedestrian access and enhanced green spaces and pulled everything closer to the curb. So we started with a box that might not have been pre-campus transformation, classically urban, and moved it in the direction you're suggesting through the campus transformation. Bringing access points, making it pedestrian friendly, adding a coffee shop, adding green spaces. So it is a much more urban design than before this campus transformation started.
I'm Michelle Carroll Pharma, architect and interior designer on the project with SPG and Zimpel, and the curve continues along the existing curtain wall of the building, so it does respect that curve, and then, like Matt said, allows.
In addition, the entry is right at that drop off and service drive. And we were trying to maintain a little bit of a buffer as well, from the sense of patients.
The canopy is pretty deep.
Yeah.
But the canopy for your main entry for your walkers, even imaginary, whatever it is. I'm sorry.
Please.
Is a little shallow. And from a three-dimensional perspective, it's not as critical, but I wondered what your thought process might have been.
Sure. Part of that is, yes, we wanted to provide something that provided cover at the same time, working within a structural system that we have to support this. Obviously, from cost perspectives, as well as just this is having to be suspended, the curtain wall itself, which is a little bit of structural gymnastics with that, and making that extend further is really not viable with the current structural system that we have in place.
I do have a comment. I understand that the yellow and the square shape is very intentional. However, I think that it does really take away from a lot of the beautiful aspects of the building, particularly the shape and how it kind of gently curves around. There's a lot of really nice with that sort of the blue mosaic on the side, the way that the glass kind of has a blue like hue to it, and the continuation of the site. But then this is sort of right in the middle, and I think it does take away from a lot of the really successful aspects of the design. And I just wondered if there was any alternative shape or treatment of that to sort of bring it all together a little more cohesively.
So so part of it is because we were trying to take the language of the existing where you do have these breaks, where the neutral solid panel is there to the right-hand side of the image, maintaining that type of language that these are interjected along that curve of glass. There's another one further down off the page. So there is kind of a rhythm to having glass and solid, glass and solid. Likewise, we were trying to maintain an identity that this is new to the Children's Hospital, while yes, we are wanting to, maintain the integrity and the historic nature of the existing, it is also trying to be a little more playful and distinguish itself to a degree, a little bit differently than the existing facility. And as mentioned at the beginning, like saying about the yellow itself, that Walker, was Walker's favorite color. It's part of his legacy as well as the, his foundation, Kids Join the Fight. If you go to the website, it's all in yellow, every, there's flashes of yellow throughout the page of that, but square form or the cuboid form is also kind of similar to the existing elements where you have that beige neutral color. You can see that it's kind of a squared off shape as well. So we were just really trying to maintain the integrity of the existing while at the same time reinforcing this as a new, the future of Children's Hospital.
I have similar concerns about the other, object. I feel like if it was a little bit more integrated into the overall design of the addition rather than the vinyl. Or not better, but I do understand the design direction to it's like the banner and the creativity and all of that. Guess I feel like because it's took back and, I feel like hospitals, if I was in, if this what I would do if I was expanding campus. Probably not. But they have decided to have driveway in the corner, like, necessarily, like, the real applicable, so. Well, I have some misgivings about it, I don't have any reference.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'm just gonna say, I think the RTA, we have a planned mobility project, mobility hub project, and also is identified as one of them at some point, we're on that lines, but I think we're looking more towards on the other side. So. Interesting, yeah. Make a motion to approve.
We do have comments. We have comments in support.
That's just us.
Okay, so I just want.
I had never filled out a card before.
Yeah.
Deck.
We'll wait until Eleanor gets back so she can weigh in. Okay.
I don't have a problem with the straight, the yellow popping out like that, because I'm trying to like, view it the way the child would view it, and stay like crazy colors, but maybe, I think maybe something Elmer was saying about maybe some more a pattern as opposed to just the one like object standing out, maybe a pattern of the yellow and that a replication of that shape somehow.
Sure. So, and definitely thanks for all the feedback and comments. So what's a little difficult, and the rendering does not portray this really, is that the fenestration or the patterning on the front of that yellow box appears really opaque. It appears that there's just one solid color of yellow, but each infill piece of glass actually has varying levels of yellow. So some will be darker, some will be lighter, to give, once again, playfulness on that front elevation, so that it does help break that down, because most people's visual experience of this when they're entering will be, looking at more eye level from grade versus seeing kind of this volume. So when you're standing at the drop-off area, you're really going to just see beyond the yellow box. But if you do look up, there is some playfulness and some degrees of patterning on that front elevation. And then, as you can see in the zoomed in version here to the left, we do pick up that yellow again to recall on those feature walls on the exterior, because that is unoccupied space. People will be able to go out there and There's gonna be some exhibits out there as well, a pet course, actually.
Yeah, have you thought about, some of your, storefront members or your columns on the second floor colony to pick up some of the yellow brighter colors, just to sort of begin to sort of
Yeah, have
fade away,
around.
transition.
We have not, but the columns, will be painted columns to begin with, so whether it's white or the. Look into it, yeah, we can look into it.
I'll just, we have a motion on the table and we're kind of at the end of our allotted time with one more item, so I'll second, Jenga's motion.
Motion to approve. RTA, second by CPC. All in favor? Any in opposition? And the motion passes.
Thank you everyone for your comments.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, also, our final item is consideration of a revised design for a development that was previously considered by this committee. Project location is 5400 Magazine, which is at the corner of Jefferson and Magazine. There was once a probably 1980s bank building there, demolished in recent months, and it is now slated for redevelopment of this 3-story commercial building, stucco phase. I believe all commercial tenants, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So yeah, I think just, noting that this has been, or a previous version has been considered by DAC and we've moved on to this revised design, if you can kind of talk it through and kind of explain the thought process that went from the previous design to the new.
So, yeah, it's essentially a new project, and a new proposition, as a result of the changes, it's really a new design. The prior design was, had a different program, a different use, and a different set of requirements. And so the new project is really a result of a complete change in what the overall direction of the project was. You're absolutely correct that it is a purely commercial project, but it is conceived to be relatively regular rhythm with the facade and benign with the structural grid, so that it is adaptive in the future. Because there is a recognition in the part of this owner that there needs to be some longevity to the building and that they do want to be a long-term resident of this corner. And so there has been some drive and some ambitions that have been communicated to the design team to have a very sort of regular rhythm, regular structural grid, so that if they do want to adapt it into the future, it can. With that being said, the ground floor is a commercial use. They do not have a cafe or restaurant tenant at this time. That is their desire. And so we did sort of work the ground floor condition, which with the character preservation corridor requirements, obviously a publicly accessible commercial use of the ground floor is really part and parcel of what we see in the Magazine Street corridor. The other aspect of the project being a corner site, and what we see typically over and over again within the Magazine Street corridor as part of the character, is that the entry to the commercial part of the building is oriented to the corner condition. So again, that's what you see here. We're orienting the main entry to the commercial space at the corner condition. And we've been able to design that in a way that we're not intruding into the public right of way to deal with the stairs. We do have an accessible entry to that corner condition on the opposite side of the building. The canopy component, and if you guys want to go through some of the precedents that we've looked at, if you go to slide 4 and 5. So we did spend a lot of time looking at similarly scaled buildings within the character preservation corridor district of Magazine Street. And what we see time and time again is there's an emphasis and articulation on the ground floor condition, which is typically commercial in nature. There's a regular rhythm to the facades, which has a stacked window configuration, typically at the second and third floor conditions.
and that we're expressing that rhythm with the depth of the facade. If we go to the next one, this was another key example that we looked at. This is the Harry's Ace Hardware building, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. So again, I think the balance of the simplicity on Magazine Street, I think is key to putting the emphasis on the experience, the overall urban design experience along the facades. And that the building itself formally is very restrained, but has a proportion and grain and rhythm that is consistent with the historic development pattern of the street. We can get to the next one. And this is another corner configuration building. This one's stucco, but again, you can see that there's a stacked configuration of windows, and then the ground floor condition is differentiated through the use of storefront glazing and transom, which we've integrated into our design as well. The next slide, again, is just sort of, again, echoing those same themes, so we use those themes. The last slide that we had, there obviously is a lot of variation on Magazine Street. When we looked at examples like this, these didn't seem to be really part and parcel of what we saw as the historic development pattern or the character. Some of these are more recent constructions, but we wanted to steer clear of these types of examples. The historic examples we think are more appropriate for the urban condition and the rhythm of the facade. If we go back to the renderings, I'll just talk through a little bit about how we've organized the facade.
First or second one.
Let me get that first one. And so, again, the ground floor condition, which has to comply with the 50% glazing requirement, the ground floor condition. We've also integrated a masonry water table, which again is a feature that helps ground that building and kind of gives an emphasis and gives us a base. The upper floors tend to be pretty repetitive, like I said, in stack. We do have some tile inset details at the pilaster conditions. And just to be clear, I mean, you probably have to zoom in. The pilasters have depth, they are not like a 2-inch reveal. They are actually have depth. The windows are actually set back into that condition. And then what we see typically on most of the buildings that I think are representative of the historic character of Magazine Street, there is a notion of a top or an ending of the building. The building doesn't just terminate into a flat parapet. And so by introducing a entablature or cornice element onto the top of the building, again, it helps us sort of cap and be consistent with what we see in similar configurations of historic architecture along the street. There's quite a bit of glazing. I think our proportion of solid wall to glazing is definitely generous and in keeping with what we see in a lot of the conditions along Magazine Street. And again, just having the sort of elegant, repetitive in the scale and in the grain of what we see historically out of there, which would have been typically load-bearing masonry and timber frame floor construction. We don't have like a modern, extremely wide bay. That would really be uncharacteristic. The canopy and overhang, again, this is a very sort of pedestrian-oriented feature that we see in a lot of buildings in Magazine Street. It creates some spaces and some occasions for things to occur that are consistent with the overall use of those storefronts along Magazine Street. And bringing that around the corner, I think, again, helps us address that corner condition. The building across the street is it more of a Victorian commercial. It probably was converted from residential uses at some point in time. It is taller. It has a taller spire. So we do see this building as sort of a more subdued backdrop to that corner condition, which is like the St. Charles side of Magazine Street. But again, we do feel like this building itself at the corner helps ground. Jefferson and Magazine Street are, fairly high volume roadways. We are a little bit below the allowed height. We did leave a little bit of elbow room in the overall height, but we are not above the allowable height of 40 feet. And so I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have and look forward to your comments regarding this current design.
In the second image, is that a garage entrance?
That's
Okay.
the garage entrance to the parking at the first floor.
Okay.
And we put that entrance as far away from the corner as we could practically do it. Again, just that's, makes it, but it's not a high volume garage. I think it's 5 spaces total. So again, we don't want to have any curb cut or vehicular incursions into the more active pedestrian right of way, which is the Magazine Street. Currently, the site has a curb cut on Magazine Street. We are abandoning that curb cut.
Does anyone have any questions?
Are you using tree breaks?
So what they have right now is actually about a 30-inch green space that occurs on Jefferson and on Magazine Street. So we weren't proposing to change these are existing conditions.
Okay.
There's no trees in them currently, but we would like to, right now it's just weeds. We would like to landscape those plots. They're existing and they're with red trees. I think they've since one. I think they had great myrtles, or something, but I didn't make it.
Yeah, we just talked about it in the last meeting about too much. I didn't think for the guy.
Okay. Yeah, and if there's some discomfort with the existing condition, we're happy to address it, Louis. I mean, if you want to get a little bit more width on Magazine, it's not like an owner requirement for the trees.
You had to get.
Okay.
So I understand probably all of the financial. I get it. But it's a lot put on the site. I think whatever. A lot put on the site. I'm not saying,
I don't know if that's a question or if you could.
I don't think anyone would disagree, especially given the fabric that surrounds it. And I agree that there are examples all along Magazine Street, that practice precedent for it. So I need to get on board with the idea of it, but this, elevation gives me great pause. Sheer wall condition. Be a lot like the body covers over order.
I think that's a fair comment. So, the design team brought that base structure around that first corner
Right.
to try and, mitigate some of what I know you're pointing towards here. Now, if we needed to, there isn't anything in the program that would keep us from extending the vocabulary further along that rear, which would eliminate, in my mind, the concern of too much going beside visible from the public right of way. And so I love how we, follow what stuff we're doing, but I love how we have this bay articulation. So if it's more amenable to you, Eleanor, we're happy to take it, and I'm happy to take your comment to the owner and tell them
Yes.
we need to eliminate some of this blank
I
wall.
think as a group, I'd love for us to push you to continue to work with vocabulary around. So then, short of having a setback,
Mhm.
for the third floor,
Mhm.
on elevation, which I'm sure they don't want to do, because they don't have the square footage. That's straight on, which I want relation and really implement.
We can present it as such to them as well.
Right, I think that would go a long way. I still think even giving that, if it's too much, too big. I think certain neighbors are gonna have opinion about it, with getting built. And I just like my concern that it's too much math on this, like, given the other context. Reservation, but I understand. Well, that it's operating.
So one thing too that I would offer, in addition to the rear component, Eleanor. So this bay vocabulary, so this is the elevation below, right? So this is the section that is the interior lot line facing wall, which isn't highly visible. But that corner condition is visible. We can extend that vocabulary all the way to the corner where the ADA.
Go further. I mean, I think what would be really revealing, and I think there's a reason why you didn't submit the rendering from the other side, that's not a good driving down there, but then if you had the buildings in the foreground and this in the background, you could see how flat it is.
That's absolutely not the reason why. We're sort of resource constrained as architects
I
on
mean, I
projects.
want to see that rendering.
So,
Like
and I think what it would show is that actually none of this is visible because we have 2- and 3-story fabric within 2 lots of this location. So if we're at the upriver side looking down, that view is obscured.
Well, I would love to see that view, because it would make me feel better, but, I think the further, each more windows you can put in.
Yeah, we can carry this another day on the interior lot line side so that we do not have, there will not be any blank wall visible from the public right of way. And we can do the same thing on the rear, just as suggested.
Any other thoughts?
I'll make a motion for approval, emphasizing all those comments without continuing the demonstration along that interior side.
Motion by CPC for approval, Eleanor's comments, and second by RTA. All in favor? Any in opposition? And the motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you doing today.
Is the neighborhood?
They've seen it, and so he's at